The atmospheric analyzer in Vexalia's portable scanner indicated breathable conditions, but she kept her translucent respiratory filter in place. Not out of necessity, but comfort. Like everything about Earth, the air felt too chaotic, filled with pollen, moisture, and unidentified particulates that made her nasal receptors twitch. "You'll get used to it," said Dominic, the human assigned as her cultural liaison. His tall frame moved with the casual looseness typical of humans, a stark contrast to the measured precision of movement valued on Helix 9. Besides, you can't really experience Earth if you're filtering everything through tech. Vexalia adjusted her iridescent jumpsuit, designed to mimic human clothing while maintaining the protective functions her biology required. "The purpose of my research is observation, not participation," she reminded him, her voice carrying the slight metallic resonance of her translator. "The Galactic Anthropological Society seeks to understand human sociological patterns objectively." Dominic laughed, a sound Vexalia still found jarring. Her species communicated amusement through subtle electrical signals detectable only to others of her kind. Good luck with that approach. Some things about humans you can only understand by experiencing them. They walked through what Dominic called a boardwalk, a wooden pathway alongside an ocean that humans inexplicably built attractions next to, despite the obvious risks of erosion and tidal anomalies. Around them, humans engaged in behaviors that defied logical explanation. What purpose does that serve? Vexalia pointed to a massive structure where humans were being elevated and then dropped at alarming speeds, their screams audible even over the ambient noise. "That's a roller coaster," Dominic explained. "It's fun." "Fun," Vexalia repeated, the translator struggling with the concept. "Your species deliberately induces fear responses for enjoyment?" "Exactly." Dominic's face displayed the expression her research identified as enthusiasm. "The adrenaline rush, the thrill of controlled danger, it's exhilarating." Vexalia made a notation in her digital log. On Helix 9, recreation involves harmonious mental stimulation. Mathematical puzzles, synchronized movement rituals, or telepathic resonance sessions. "Sounds organized," Dominic replied with the facial expression humans made when trying to be polite about something they found unappealing. A small human child ran past them, sticky substance coating its hands and face, shrieking at a volume that made Vexalia's auditory receptors automatically dampen. "That child appears distressed," she observed. "Should we alert authorities?" Dominic's body shook with laughter. No. He's just excited. Probably had too much cotton candy." "You feed your young crystallized sugar deliberately?" Vexalia's bioluminescent freckles flashed with alarm. As they continued walking, Vexalia catalogued more perplexing human activities. Adults throwing projectiles at targets to win plush representations of Earth creatures. Others consuming toxins, alcohol, Dominic called it, that deliberately impaired cognitive function. Everywhere, chaos that somehow didn't devolve into disaster. "Would you like to try something?" Dominic gestured toward a less intimidating attraction where humans were navigating small vessels through water. "Merely observing is sufficient," Vexalia insisted, though something unfamiliar flickered within her, curiosity, perhaps, beyond the academic kind. Later, as the sun set and multicolored lights illuminated the boardwalk, Vexalia watched Dominic's profile against the darkening sky. He'd purchased a frozen sweet substance for himself, and his expression as he consumed it indicated pleasure. "In 6 standard rotations, I've catalogued 17 distinct categories of fun activities," she noted. "None appear to serve evolutionary advantage or skill development. Yet humans devote significant resources to them." Dominic turned to her, the lights reflecting in his eyes. "Not everything has to have a purpose, Vex. Sometimes the experience itself is the point." The concept was so foreign that her translator briefly faltered. "Experience for its own sake? Without measurement or advancement?" As humans around them laughed and shouted, Vex'ahlia felt simultaneously repelled and drawn to their chaotic joy. She made another notation in her log: human recreation, possibility of deeper significance than initially assessed. Further study required. What she didn't record was the strange sensation in her chest when Dominic smiled at her, something that felt dangerously close to what humans might call excitement. RETR. Your posture indicates discomfort, Vex'ahlia observed as Dominic shifted in the laboratory chair. 3 weeks into her Earth assignment, she'd established a research station in her temporary quarters, a sterile counterpoint to the chaotic human dwelling surrounding it. These chairs aren't exactly designed for humans, Dominic replied, stretching. Speaking of discomfort, you've been on Earth for almost a month and haven't participated in a single recreational activity. Vex'ahlia's skin rippled with faint bioluminescent patterns, her species equivalent of a dismissive shrug. I've compiled extensive observational data. Direct participation would compromise objectivity. Science requires experimentation, came a new voice from the doorway. Vex'ahlia turned to see Dominic's friend Juno leaning against the frame, her dark curls framing an expression of amusement. You can't understand rain by watching it through a window. Vex'ahlia had met Juno twice before, a botanist whose quick mind and directness had earned a rare notation of approval in Vex'ahlia's personal logs. An imperfect metaphor. One can measure precipitation quite accurately through transparent barriers. Juno laughed. Fine. You can't understand a kiss by watching others do it. The translator caught briefly on the word kiss, cycling through several helix, 9 concepts before settling on voluntary exchange of microbiota through oral contact. Vex'ahlia felt an unexpected warmth in her facial region. I propose an experiment, Juno continued, exchanging a glance with Dominic that Vex'ahlia couldn't interpret. Something mildly fun. If you hate it, we'll stop bothering you about participation. That would be inefficient use of research time, Vex'ahlia replied, though she found herself calculating potential benefits against time loss. I dare you, Juno said, a phrase Vex'ahlia had documented as a significant human social catalyst. Dominic leaned forward. Just 1 hour. Tomorrow. No roller coasters or bungee jumping, I promise. Vex'ahlia's gaze lingered on Dominic's face. The earnestness in his expression triggered an unfamiliar response in her central nervous system. Very well. 1 hour. For science. Later that evening, after Juno left, Vex'ahlia found Dominic on the dwelling's outdoor platform, balcony, her translator supplied. What should I prepare for tomorrow's experiment? She asked, joining him under the night sky. Dominic looked at her, his expression softened by the dim light. Nothing. That's the point of fun, being present without preparation. Inefficient, she noted, but without her usual conviction. Can I ask something? Dominic's tone shifted. On your world, do your people form attachments? Relationships beyond professional ones? The question triggered Vex'ahlia's bioluminescence to pulse in patterns she hoped her specialized clothing concealed. We form genetic partnerships based on compatibility algorithms. Some maintain prolonged intellectual collaborations. But not emotional connections? Emotions are recognized as biochemical processes. We acknowledge them but don't organize social structures around them. Even as she explained, Vex'ahlia was acutely aware of her own biochemical processes, elevated heart rate, unusual neural activity when Dominic moved slightly closer. That sounds lonely, he said softly. One cannot miss what one has never experienced, she replied, though something in her resonated with the human concept of loneliness for the first time. As darkness enveloped them, Vex'ahlia found herself calculating the precise distance between their hands on the balcony railing, 5.2 centimeters. A trivial measurement, yet it dominated her awareness. Her scientific training demanded she acknowledge the truth, her interest in Dominic had evolved beyond professional. A concerning development that threatened her objectivity. Yet as she watched the starlight reflect in his eyes, objectivity seemed suddenly overrated. For tomorrow's experiment, she said finally, I will attempt to participate without analysis. Dominic's smile triggered another cascade of those troublesome biochemical reactions. That, Vex, might be the most fun thing of all. This is undignified, Vexalia protested as the spherical projectile bounced off the transparent partition for the third time. The arcade, as Dominic called it, assaulted her senses with flashing lights and discordant sounds allegedly classified as music. Bowling isn't about dignity, Juno laughed, demonstrating the proper form again. It's about knocking things down and not caring how you look doing it. Dominic stood behind Vexalia, guiding her arms through the motion. Relax your joints. You're moving like a robot. My species has superior joint rigidity for precision movement, Vexalia informed him, though she allowed her structure to loosen slightly. The proximity of his body to hers created that now familiar disruption to her homeostasis. On her fourth attempt, the ball rolled down the lane and knocked over 3 pins. Objectively a poor performance, yet Vexalia felt an unexpected surge of satisfaction. You did it. Dominic's hand briefly touched her shoulder in celebration. By the 6th frame, Vexalia had calculated the optimal force application and angle. When all 10 pins fell, the sound that escaped her wasn't entirely unlike a human cheer. I believe I've mastered this activity, she announced, surprised by the warmth in her voice. Juno exchanged that look with Dominic again. Ready to level up? 1 hour later, Vexalia found herself secured into a contraption that defied rational design, loops of metal track that would soon hurl her body at unsafe velocities. I've changed my assessment. This is inadvisable, she stated as the roller coaster car began its ascent. Dominic's hand found hers, warm against her cooler skin. Just breathe. And when it drops, let yourself feel everything without analyzing it. The climb seemed eternal, Earth spreading below them. Vexalia's sensors captured atmospheric data, altitude metrics, structural stress indicators, a flood of information that failed to prepare her for the moment of free fall. The drop cancelled all thought. For 97 seconds, which her internal chronometer somehow both measured precisely and experienced as an eternity, Vexalia existed purely in sensation. The rush of air, the pressure of acceleration, the surrender to forces beyond control. When they finally slowed to a stop, she realized 2 things simultaneously. She was clutching Dominic's hand with unexpected strength, and her vocal apparatus had produced sounds she'd never made before. You screamed. Dominic laughed, his face flushed with excitement. And look, you're smiling. Vexalia's hand moved to her face, confirming that her facial muscles had indeed configured into the expression humans associated with pleasure. More surprising was her desire to experience the sensation again. That evening, walking along the beach as the sun set, Vexalia struggled to record coherent research notes. How could she document the feeling of surrendering to gravity? The strange pleasure of temporary terror? You're quiet, Dominic noted. Sensory overload? Linguistic inadequacy, she corrected. My species lacks terminology for these experiences. They stopped walking, ocean waves creating rhythmic patterns at their feet. Dominic turned to face her, closer than protocol would permit on Helix 9. Some things don't need words, he said softly. The kiss, when it happened, created yet another category of unexplainable sensation, one that bypassed her analytical functions entirely. His lips were warm, his touch cautious then certain. Vexalia's bioluminescence responded involuntarily, glowing through her clothing in patterns that, on her world, would have communicated desires she'd never acknowledged until now. When they separated, Vexalia found herself devoid of scientific observation. Instead, there was only a singular thought, more. Their return to the dwelling passed in a blur of new sensations, hands exploring unfamiliar anatomy, discoveries of unexpected sensitivity, the strange power of deliberate vulnerability. For the first time, Vex'ahlia understood why humans considered physical intimacy worthy of so much artistic and cultural attention. Afterward, watching Dominic sleep beside her, Vex'ahlia faced an uncomfortable truth: she was no longer an objective observer of humanity. She had become, in some small but significant way, a participant in their chaotic, beautiful existence. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it exhilarated her, like the roller coaster's first drop, but infinitely more profound. I believe the expression is, heads up. Vex'ahlia called before launching the disc through the air with surprising accuracy. 2 months into her Earth assignment, her movements had lost their rigid precision, replaced by a fluidity that still surprised her. Dominic dove to catch the frisbee, rolling dramatically on the grass. "When did you get so good at this?" "I've been practicing while you sleep," Vex'ahlia admitted. "Humans require excessive rest periods." Juno, sprawled on a picnic blanket nearby, snorted. "Says the alien who screamed her way through every haunted house at the Halloween festival last night." "I was documenting varied fear responses," Vex'ahlia protested, though her skin flickered with patterns that, among her kind, would indicate embarrassment. The truth was more complex. In the weeks since her first roller coaster ride, Vex'ahlia had embraced human recreation with unexpected enthusiasm. Her research log now included experiences ranging from karaoke, disastrous, to surfing, surprisingly successful, to something called ghost pepper wings that had temporarily compromised her respiratory system. Most concerning was her diminishing scientific detachment. Yesterday, during a particularly absurd human film involving improbable physics and excessive explosions, Vex'ahlia had produced a spontaneous laugh, not the careful approximation she'd been practicing, but a genuine, uncontrolled vocalization of amusement. Later that afternoon, after Juno departed, Vex'ahlia received the transmission she'd been dreading. Her supervisor from Helix 9 appeared as a holographic projection in her laboratory, expression configured to indicate severe disapproval. "Research Specialist Vex'ahlia, your latest reports show concerning irregularities," the projected figure stated. "Your observation protocols have degraded significantly." "I've implemented immersive methodologies," Vex'ahlia responded, consciously straightening her posture to its former rigidity. "The data gathered is compromised by your personal involvement," her supervisor interrupted. "Your biochemical telemetry indicates you've engaged in intimate contact with a subject species member." Heat spread across Vex'ahlia's skin. The monitoring implant, she'd forgotten it continued transmitting data to the Research Council. Physical interaction provides insights into human sociology that "You are being recalled," the supervisor stated flatly. "Contamination protocols will be implemented upon your return." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Vex'ahlia staring at empty space. Contamination protocols. The procedure would reset her neurological patterns, erasing experiential memory to prevent corruption of the collective knowledge base. They would take her memories of Earth, of fun, of Dominic. When he returned from his work responsibilities, Vex'ahlia attempted to explain the situation with her former clinical precision. Instead, her voice faltered, her respiratory system functioning irregularly in a manner humans would identify as choking up. "They can't just brainwash you," Dominic argued, his own emotional response evident in his elevated volume and quickened movements. That's barbaric. "My species values objective knowledge above individual experience," Vex'ahlia explained, though the explanation rang hollow even to her. "Emotional attachment is considered contamination." Dominic's hand found hers, the familiar warmth now carrying painful significance. "Is that what I am to you? A contamination?" The question penetrated deeper than any scientific inquiry ever had. Vex'ahlia's bioluminescence responded before she could formulate words, patterns of intensity that transcended language. "No," she whispered. You are evidence that my species' understanding is incomplete. That night, their intimacy carried a desperate intensity. Vex'ahlia memorized every sensation, the texture of his skin, the sound of his breathing, the complex emotional cascade that humans named so simply, love. Afterward, watching the moonlight through the window, Vex'ahlia confronted a terrifying realization. She was, by her society's definition, feral, allowing emotion to override reason, valuing personal experience above collective knowledge. More shocking still was her lack of regret. If this was contamination, then perhaps her entire species existed in a state of profound deprivation. The extraction vessel would arrive in 27 hours. Vex'ahlia had packed her equipment with mechanical efficiency, each instrument a reminder of the clinical distance she'd once maintained from human existence. "I have a proposition," Dominic announced, entering the nearly empty laboratory space. His expression carried the determination she'd come to recognize as uniquely his. "One last adventure before you go." "The Research Council expects full compliance," Vex'ahlia reminded him, though even as she spoke, she was calculating the consequences of delay. "Not as a researcher," Dominic said, taking her hand. "As Vex, who learned to bowl and sing karaoke and eat ice cream too fast." The use of her truncated name, his affectionate modification, triggered a cascade of emotional responses she no longer tried to suppress. "What adventure?" she asked softly. Sunrise found them on a mountain peak, the world spread beneath them in colors her species could perceive beyond human visual range, infrared warmth mingling with ultraviolet brilliance. The beauty transcended scientific measurement. "Paragliding," Dominic explained, adjusting harnesses for a tandem flight. "Humans have figured out how to almost fly. Your species' determination to defy natural limitations is statistically improbable," Vex'ahlia noted, though she allowed him to secure her to the apparatus. "That's our whole thing," he grinned. "Doing the improbable because it's fun." The jump required surrender. As they soared above the landscape, wind surrounding them in chaotic patterns, Vex'ahlia experienced an epiphany that no data collection could have provided. The universe was not merely a system to be categorized and understood, it was to be experienced in all its terrifying, exhilarating complexity. Landing on soft Earth, Vex'ahlia's decision crystallized with sudden clarity. "I won't return to Helix 9. Dominic's expression shifted from exhilaration to concern. "They'll come for you." "Yes." She didn't deny the risk. "But they cannot undo what I've learned unless I allow it." "And what have you learned?" he asked, his hand still holding hers from helping her land. Vex'ahlia considered the question with the thoroughness of her scientific training and the newfound wisdom of her human experiences. "That observation without participation yields incomplete data. That my species' rejection of emotion has cost us essential understanding. That fun." She paused, searching for precision. "Fun is not frivolous. It's how humans connect to existence beyond survival." The sun continued its rise, bathing them in morning light. Vex'ahlia's communication device signaled an incoming transmission, likely her supervisor demanding explanation for her tracking anomalies. She silenced it. "There will be consequences," she acknowledged. "But I possess knowledge now that is worth protecting." "Knowledge about roller coasters and spicy wings?" Dominic teased, though his eyes remained serious. "Knowledge about joy," Vex'ahlia corrected. "About choosing present experience over controlled prediction." "About." Her voice softened, "about love." The word hung between them, heavy with meaning her species had dismissed as biochemical illusion. Dominic's arms encircled her, solid and real. "I can't promise Earth will always be fun. We have plenty of tedious meetings and traffic jams too." "A comprehensive experience," Vex'ahlia nodded against his chest, her bioluminescence pulsing in patterns that, if translated, would have been poetry. "I will negotiate terms with my research council. Perhaps propose an extended cultural exchange." And if they refuse? Vex'ahlia thought of the roller coaster, the moment of surrender to gravity, the exhilaration of falling without certainty. Then I will become the first of my kind to choose joy over protocol, she said simply. My data suggests the outcome, while unpredictable, will be worth the experimental risk. As they descended the mountain together, Vex'ahlia composed her final research transmission, not to Helix 9, but to the universe itself, recorded only in her memory and in the changed patterns of her existence. Human recreation, not trivial distraction but essential connection to the unpredictable beauty of existence. Further study not just required, but embraced. The researcher has become part of the data, and finds herself unwilling to return to previous limitations. Some knowledge, once experienced, cannot be undone, nor should it be. Dominic's hand found hers as they walked, and Vex'ahlia smiled, a genuine human expression she no longer needed to practice. Whatever came next, she would face it not just with analytical precision, but with the joyful courage she'd learned from the species who had shown her how to fall, fly, and feel without fear of contamination. For an alien who had come to study humans, she had instead discovered something far more valuable: how to become more fully alive.